Duran Duran is a pop group for young people with a lot of energy.
Her name is Rio, she don't need to understand. And I might find her if I'm looking like I can.
We were in a period of time where everything we touched seemed to be turning to gold.
It's a bright, colourful outburst.
We all knew that there was something very special happening.
It is pure, fantastic pop.
It's just a record that that has legs and lasting value, and it captures a moment in time.
Killer's second album.
It touches the ground. I'm on the hunt after you.
The roadside is littered with careers of one-hit wonder artists that could never follow up and didn't really understand how to write hit songs, and Duran Duran did.
Don't say a prayer for me now. Save it till the morning after. No, don't say a prayer for me now. Save it till the morning after.
Every home should have one.
See, this sound at the beginning was complete experimentation. I'd been fiddling around with the grand piano at Air Studios, and I'd actually opened up the top of it, and I was fiddling with the strings. What I actually did was that I got some metal rods, and I threw them onto the strings of the piano, and they bounced around and made this strange noise. And it wasn't quite what I was looking for, but there was something interesting about it. And I said to Colin Thurston, can we reverse that tape? Because at that time, we were just discovering things like tape loops and reversing and slowing things down and speeding things up. And he said, sure. And we reversed the sound. And what we got was the very intro of Rio.
That was really the beginning of the song, you know, that groove. You know, Roger started playing a groove with that. And we sort of built the song around that line, so we started to think in terms of chords.
Living on the floor now, babe, you're a bird of paradise. Cherry ice cream smile, I suppose it's very nice. When you step to your left and a pick to your right, you catch the mirror way out west.
The inspiration for me as a bass player was Bernard Edwards, the player with Chic, and a lot of his lines really caught my ear, and that was what made me want to play bass. And it was a very syncopated style, which was something new to me, especially as I'd sort of been playing in punk rock bands where everything was straight. So Rio was like just all of those ideas that I had about syncopation. And then when we get to the chorus, it's still like a...
Andy's guitars. It's a hell of a guitar sound, actually. Andy always used to use Marshalls, but he was quite experimental with his pedals at that time too, so I'm sure it was chorused and flanged and delayed a little.
But then I'm sure that you know it's just me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her name is she dances on the sand.
Yeah, Simon's voice, when he harmonises with himself, becomes so thick and lush. I mean, I've rarely heard other people's voices blend so well with themselves. And he's got a very unusual sense of harmony.
That's one of the things I brought to Duran Duran. I brought harmonies. You know, from my choir boy training, I was able to kind of identify notes that would you know, I always felt that music's like sometimes the music or the melody, the main melody is like a pole. And you can take a run at it at speed and grab onto it, and you can swing around it, and you can fly off in a different direction. And that's how I think about harmonies.
When we were done touring the Rio album, we all took a vacation together, and it was kind of one of those, it was like a scene from Help, you know, where the Beatles all get out of the car and they all go into 4 separate doors, you know, but actually it's all one house, you know, that they're living in. And we all took a vacation together. We went to Antigua, 4 of us, Andy didn't come. We all went, we took our girlfriends, and we all took beach houses together, you know. So every morning, you know, we'd come out with that house, morning, morning, you know, very Monty Python. And, you know, and then we got a phone call, guys, don't leave. You know, we're going to come out. We're coming out with Russell and a crew, and we're going to make a video. Andy's coming.
It's a very iconic image that we're wearing these Anthony Price suits on a yacht. It's like, what a great juxtaposition of style. But we thought we were actually filming in London, and Anthony fitted us up with all these suits. Last minute, he got changed to Antigua, so the outfits turn up. And that's the only clothes we have.
Nick loved all the pale colours, and because he wore kind of quite light makeup and had very light hair, and he could get away with all these sort of, you know, pale, sugared almond colours and silk suits and things. And obviously it all worked with the Caribbean thing of the video. It was quite tropical looking in a way, and I was always a bit tropical.
Suddenly it was bang, straight in there, style, fashion, statement, articulation.
Nobody used to go on exotic holidays and go on yachts in 1982. It wasn't achievable, it wasn't possible. So it was real vision of the future, and really anticipated, I think, that what was to come, a kind of whole celebrity culture, really.
I've seen you on the beach, and I've seen you on TV.
What they were showing to Britain was, you know, this newer world. Very cleverly, in my view, showing it.
And punk was fantastic to photograph, but because it was very graphic and black and white, really, for me. I mean, virtually all my punk pictures are black and white film. And with Duran Duran, it's going from black and white to colour. And the country and the population was going from black and white, the black and white of the recession, the unemployment, and then the Falklands War. And they were preparing to bring the colour back into everything themselves, and I think that was the contrast.
In as much as the Sex Pistols drag you back to a sense and a moment in time, Duran Duran do too.
Our instinct as teenagers that wanted it to be great, wanted our life to be good, and also wanted to put some brightness into other people's lives, was to try and make something between us that really excited us, that made us happy.
Simon's lyrics were very poetic and very beautiful and very optimistic. And that's one of the things I think that changed in the 80s. It suddenly became very optimistic.
Save the bread till the morning after. Save the bread till the morning after. Save the bread till the
I met John when I was 10 years old. Now he was 12, and he literally lived around the corner from me, and so we used to hang out all the time. We were both single kids, so no brothers and sisters, so we really became like brothers and went everywhere together.
We were friends for a few years before the idea of actually making music together came to us.
He went to art college and I was just finishing up at high school, and he was already in a band. So I was actually a little jealous of this. And the band they were quite interesting. They were called Dada. And as soon as that fell apart, we got together and I said, okay, well, right, now I can leave school. Let's do this properly. Let's form a band.
By this point, we got the bit between our teeth, and Roger was the next guy that we met.
I walked in and John just kind of picked up the bass and we just started kind of jamming along, and it immediately gelled.
John and Nick appeared with a little cassette, and we put it on the big sound system.
Ah, the Barrows. We first met them when we went to the Rum Runner. John and I had isolated it as the coolest place in town, and so we wanted to play a show there. And they got involved in the management side, and Paul was really the creative side, and Michael more on the business side.
It was time to obviously develop and mature the band, and they needed help to do that. There were only 3 of them, really, who were committed at the time. It took us about 6 months. Lots of auditioning, some false starts, and then finally Simon came bouncing in one day.
So I started singing this melody, and they were very excited by it. And we realised right then and there that we had a good combination musically, that we could do something good together.
And he opened up this book of lyrics, and it already had the chauffeur in there, and a song called Sound of Thunder. I think Planet Earth was probably in there.
Andy came down from Newcastle, Whitley Bay. He had a lot of knowledge of the fretboard. He could play a lot of chords, which Nick or I couldn't play. So he brought a lot of expertise.
It was a bit like an explosion when the 5 of us came together, because we're all very serious. We're all looking for something new, and we all knew this is exactly what we wanted to do.
Call, and he said, I'm the manager of this band called Duran Duran, and they're causing a bit of a stir in Birmingham, and I really think you should come and see them. And first of all, I was a bit dubious, because I thought, well, you know, Birmingham, can't be anything going on in Birmingham, it's all happening in London.
So Betty came up, and it was, you know, it was like a state visit, you know, because Birmingham didn't have... It wasn't very well represented in the national music media, Birmingham.
I was just blown away by their self-confidence and enthusiasm, and just their complete assurance of what they were doing. They were just so confident about who they were, what they wanted, where they wanted to go, with the whole Duran Duran project, really.
When we started out, we had a master plan, and we thought it was going to work.
All of them were just so... I mean, Roger was always a little bit quieter than the others, but the others, you know, they were all trying to get a word in.
Andy, John, Simon, Nick, Roger. When did you learn an instrument?
I learned to use my instrument when I was...
The most successful out there?
5, actually, but it was plastic at the time. but I got a real one when I was 11. So.
I was what you call a late developer. I didn't pick up mine until I was about 16.
I was born with my instrument, and it just got used sort of again and again and again. I started playing with mine when I was 17.
Roger's still a... Roger needs 2 hands for his.
Yeah. You think, OK, this is what we're going to do. You put the blinkers on and you go.
It was about 18 to 20 months that they were around rehearsing.
We knew when we got together in the room and started writing songs together that we had something special that there's something in the chemistry of us that was able to come up with more and more and more music. Girls on Film did really well. I think that got to number 5 or something. It did even better than Planet Earth had.
When we went in to do the first album, not only did that album go relatively smoothly, but it also allowed them to draw upon some of that work for the second album, which enabled Rio to go relatively smoothly.
We had a lot of material that we hadn't recorded, an awful lot of material. The first album, Duran Duran, had 2 hits on it. We had 3 singles released. We were signed by a record company. We'd been on tour with Hazel O'Connor. We were just starting, and we'd gone to America. And we were causing a big stir, so we knew something was really brewing. It was bubbling up, you know.
It was really the most exciting thing that ever happened to us. And so the energy that's in the Rio album, I think, very much came from that first trip to America.
That's the great thing about listening to this. You can hear all the different influences there and ideas, and somehow it all comes together and sounds like a whole. Because, as I said, you've got the very funky bass and drums, very dark guitars, quite dark keyboards, optimistic vocals, but it all kind of works. You know, it all just kind of gels and hangs together somehow. Duran was really a rock band with synths. It wasn't a synth band with a couple of musicians. It was a real rock band.
We were a product of our times. You know, synthesizers were becoming more important to popular music, but there was, as yet, very few records that were entirely synthesizer-based. You know, there was Kraftwerk, you know, but Depeche Mode were just about to come along. So there were going to be these synth pop, you know, was about to happen. Techno was about to happen, but we were coming out of punk. We were coming out of a tradition that was all about guitars and drums.
This was I think the rhythm on this was influenced by a song called Stay, David Bowie. I think it was on Station to Station, and it was all that kind of very syncopated bass playing. That runs all the way through this guitar. A kind of Dave Gilmour, that, I think. Quite Floydish. So it's a very unusual track, this. It's got this kind of pumping, funky rhythm section. And that's a classic Nick Rhodes sound right there, that kind of phase strings.
Don't take another chance before I carry the fight. You can take him if you're fast. Didn't I say if you're holding on?
So many vocals going on.
Fine with the friends of mine, but you have to make a choice.
I mean, those 2 voices in New Religion, you know, you got the one kind of rhythmic, gotta take pay from the scene to scene, there's in regulation, ads and scars and things, walk information down the lane, they carry it. And then you got the, don't know why this evil bothers me, and it's singing about the don't know why this evil is singing about this other voice. It's like, why have I got this in my head? Why is this stuff going on, you know?
They're not obvious pop songs, but I think it's probably that, you know, because they always had that kind of dance, slightly funky element to their sound. You know, they managed to marry all these different elements, which, you know, it was quite an achievement, because most bands wouldn't really attempt that now.
It's a very unusual sound, Duran, because if you put it on paper, it shouldn't really work.
John's a great bass groove player, you know. He really is. And the textures Nick added, you know, the guitar playing was rock and roll, the drumming's, you know, a really good drummer, you know, solid. So in that, you've got all this desire to be funky, to take it off left field.
Hold Back the Rain. And his guitar. It's almost like it's got a slap on it, like reminds me of She Was Hot, that Rolling Stones song. It's these little bass pops in there that are actually overdubbed. Then I had to learn how to play it live. You know? There's actually 2 tracks of bass, Hold Back the Rain, the basic. That's the straightforward, and then I would overdub that on a separate track. The other thing about Hold Back the Rain that is somewhat problematic is that the chorus is one of these. That's played with a pick. I just couldn't do it with my fingers. So again, it's fine in the studio where you can, okay, stop, let's get the chorus, and then we go back to. And we can go back to that. But like live, it's a bitch.
The teenage thing, none of us foresaw the teenage thing. We just thought we were going to be an album band and we were going to have, you know, quite a serious audience. But obviously the music we were making was actually transcending that, and it was reaching a far wider audience.
The first Smash Hits cover that we had was Roger and Nick, which was really bizarre if you think about it. And that immediately gives you a sense of like the appeal of the band, the fact that this like all-out pop magazine would take the drummer and the keyboard player and put them on the front. And I think that was significant because that let everybody know, you know, this is a band of interesting individuals.
When we first went to Australia was when we really noticed it in a big way, because actually Planet Earth had become a #1 single there. And we went there and they were just crazy, and we had to get security and we were locked in hotels, and I mean, it was sort of funny at the time.
None of us had really had time to grow up into, you know, rounded adults. We were still living at home, you know, so it was a very steep climb.
I was in a car with Roger leaving the show one day, and the car was rocked by fans. They were crawling all over it. And I could see they absolutely hated it. Was quite put off by it. I think too many of those incidents was too much for him in a way. Whereas John and Nick sort of lived for all that.
And I didn't think the lights were particularly good.
I remember getting back from our first American tour, and my father still wouldn't let me watch what I wanted to watch on the television, you know. Oh, God.
I think with the Rio album, we had definitely learned some good lessons from the first album. We were lucky enough to have worked with Colin Thurston, who was our choice as a producer. He'd worked with David Bowie and Iggy Pop. So for us, this was incredible to be in the studio with someone who'd made some of our favourite records.
Well, Colin was a very, very calm hand at the wheel, and I don't think at any point when I was working with Colin did I question any of the sounds that he was generating. I mean, he knew exactly how our band needed to sound.
He heard the talent that was in the band. He heard the raw songwriting, performing talent. And he and he made it modern.
The great thing about Colin was that he really knew how to nurture people. Which you get great producers that are, you know, amazing with the desk and great with the soundscapes, but they're not great with people. But Colin was amazing, you know, with people, and I miss him. I really miss him. He died recently, and it was a very sad day for me because somebody went out of my life that was a very big influence on me.
It was actually the last track that we started recording on the Rio album. We were running so late that we decided to take on an extra room. We started work in this other room just to try and speed things up a little. And I said to Simon, look, I've got an idea. I'd like to make it a little more electronic.
Yeah.
Because originally it had been done with an acoustic guitar.
That's right, that's right.
And so I started building the track, and we actually started, the first thing I started with a rhythm box and the sequencer. Okay, that's part of the rhythm box. There should be a bit that says clap. There you go, clap. Yeah.
There you go.
So that was the beginning of it. And then the sequencer.
And the sequencer is very similar to the original guitar part, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And then Simon would come back and forth, and I'd go in and fix some things up on another track whilst we were in between.
I was amazed by what you came up with. Actually, it was nothing like I'd ever imagined a song would ever sound like.
Way down the lane away, living for another day. The aphids climb up in the drifting haze. Swim seagull in the sky towards that hollow western eye. My envied lady holds you fast in her gaze.
That's the piano and the bass synth.
Yeah,
That's the piano on its own.
Do 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 do.
Out on the top plains, the glides are moving. Oh, looking for a new place to drive.
I love processing.
Well, it only really works with the bass, doesn't it? Those notes. Isn't that amazing?
Works for me.
Yeah.
Sing, blue silver.
I wonder, can we get the glass breaking as well? That'd be a noise as well, do you think? Yeah, so let's solo it. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Now. There it is.
It wasn't really glass at all. I shouldn't
wasn't, was
spoil
it?
what it is.
No.
It's actually ice being dropped into water that just made that sound that sounded like glass. But,
Yeah.
you know, there you go.
Finishing Rio, it marked the end of Duran Duran's innocence. Because actually, we came away from that, and Nick will tell you all about what it was like to go down to Sri Lanka, straight out of the mixing studios. He mixed that record with Colin.
At the end of the album, we had a very tight deadline. We actually had to be on tour in Australia by a certain date, and before then, we had to make some videos.
We were all very interested in video at that point. It wasn't something that we backed away from, because the band was always about aesthetics, and, you know, the image of the band was very important.
But the album wasn't quite finished. There was 3 or 4 mixes left to do and some editing, so I said, listen, I'm not going anywhere until the album's done. You'll have to start doing the video without me, and I'll catch up.
Their management in the Barrows, Paul and Mike Barrow, were very, very ahead of their time in the awareness factor about this.
Paul had this idea to go onto location. I think he'd obviously recently seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, and there's a bit of Apocalypse Now in there as well.
It was such a simple idea, but nobody else had even thought of that. Just taking your camera out of the room to this amazing country with all this amazing scenery and shooting a video.
I was a frustrated filmmaker, a frustrated feature filmmaker. I wanted to be and make movies. So no one would give me money to make anything longer than 4 minutes. So I went, okay, I'll make 4-minute long movies.
Woman, you want me, give me a sign, and catch my breathing even closer behind.
Russell was one of the great music video directors that emerged from that period as a director that could see how the result of a great music track combined to interesting, glamorous visuals with the right artist could create something that was more than the sum of the parts.
Simon and I liked it because we had that. We were a bit more kind of adventurous, and we liked traveling. We liked going to slightly weird places. I didn't think Nick liked the idea very much because he still liked wearing makeup and stuff. So for him, going to Sri Lanka and staying in a dodgy old hotel somewhere was not something he wanted to do, I don't think.
I got there completely fried, having not slept for 2 or 3 days, and I arrived in Sri Lanka thinking, okay, record's done, I'm going to take it and play it to everyone else. Let's hope they're happy. I got off, came out from the plane, I was thinking, well, okay, where's the guy with my limo? So I was looking around, and an Indian guy comes over to me, he said, Nick? I said, yeah. I said, well, where's the car? He said, oh, it's over here. So we go out, and it's blistering heat, and I'm dressed from head to toe in black leather. So, wow, okay, well, let's get in the car, and perhaps there'll be some air conditioning. Anyway, it's a flatbed truck. So, oh, my God. I said, well, how long is it to the hotel? Expecting him to say 20 minutes. He said, 5 hours.
Nick is the most urbane member of Duran Duran, was then, and is still now. The most difficult to get out of the city.
So we drive for 5 hours over these dust tracks all the way into God knows where in Sri Lanka. And we end up there, and literally as I arrive, somebody gets my bag and takes it up to the hotel, and I'm walking down to the beach where they're filming in a complete daze, and an elephant walked past me on the street. I was on my own. I thought I was hallucinating.
It was so much fun doing those. We worked so hard. We'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, we'd go to bed at 11 o'clock at night, and we'd work all day long in between. And we were totally exhausted by the end of our 5 days there.
But it kind of worked. It was kind of so, it was one of the, this is so crazy. We got these guys in eyeliner and crazy color hair, and they're on the back of elephants. It was so bizarre, but it was kind of irresistible.
But we came back with 3 whole videos.
Hungry Like the Wolf was actually written with the Jupiter 8, which is the synthesizer I used for much of the sound on the Rio album. It was sort of new out around that time, about 1982, and I completely fell in love with it. Simon and I think, had been out the night before, and we had the most terrible hangover. And for some reason, we're feeling guilty about it and decided to go and do some work. So we went to EMI Studios at Manchester Square, and we got in quite early, and we'd been listening to something in the car, and we got a sort of idea, and I started playing with this sound. It won't sound quite the same, I shouldn't think, because it needs effects, but... And Simon had an idea for a lyric, and by lunchtime, when everyone else turned up, we pretty much had the song. And Andy came in and played a killer guitar riff on top of it, and John and Roger thought, this is easy.
Well, that's pretty hooky already, isn't it, now? And then you got Andy's angry guitars. It's really Andy that gave the band that real edge. But Andy was he was from Newcastle, so he had this edge to him.
Later, Roger added the Simmons drums, and suddenly it sounded like nothing else we'd ever heard.
It's got these great big fills in, which was this amazing new kit. It's like a hexagonal drum kit. There was only really two sounds on there. You had this sound, there we go, which is really cool, very new sound then. And it had a really kind of pingy disco-y sound as well, which nobody used, but this was one of the drum sounds of the 80s, was this drum. In fact, there's a big roll coming up. There we go. One of Colin's things, we always had had a lot of ambience on the record. You know, we record the drums very tightly, as you can hear here. It's a very tight drum sound, but then he'd add this ambience. There you go, that's with the ambience. And that kind of defined the drum sound for the 80s in a way. You'd have this kind of gated ambience. If you listen to In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins, it's got this drum sound that's it's got this beautiful ambient sound on it. And that was how Colin liked to record. It was this combination of tightly recorded stuff and big ambient mics that gave it that really powerful movement.
I remember interviewing them after the album, after Rio had come out, when they'd just come back from a really grueling 2.5-month tour supporting Blondie in the States and Canada. And they were absolutely exhausted. And obviously this is all part of how you broke America.
The band had this very effeminate image in the US at the time. It was quite tricky, selling a new romantic movement with makeup, etc., to an American audience, especially in the Midwest.
There was always this issue in the US about whether you needed to remix certain parts of an album or a single or a song to fit, in quotes, the American marketplace, the American club scene. And I had met a producer called David Kirschenbaum.
Well, the first thing that struck me were the chord progressions. The melody and the chord progressions were different than what was going on in American music at the time. And that was captured by some really infectious rhythm.
And I had introduced him to, I think, Paul Barrow, with a view that maybe Paul would want to consider him to help in remixing some parts of the album, so that it would give a kind of more of a, in quotes, an American feel or an American mix to some of that music.
And that's really what we were kind of aiming at, is getting Simon's voice correctly out in front, but yet surrounding it with the right rhythm elements that would bring it forward. And I was taken by the sound. I thought it was something that could definitely work.
So yes, we sold our soul, and we remixed the album with David, who did a very good job.
But then there was this whole new other avenue, MTV.
When we were starting out, what we wanted to do was bring together the two greatest cultural forces in America for the baby boomers. One was rock and roll music, and the other one was television.
A music channel where they were going to play nothing but videos. This was a revolution.
Hungry Like the Wolf was picked up by MTV. They put it into high rotation.
One day, my associate, Tom Freston, and I, who were there at the beginning of MTV, were out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just doing anything we could to try to find a story about MTV having an impact on record sales.
And Capitol Records could see that in certain towns, for no apparent reason, Duran was moving stock.
A clerk scratches his head and say, yeah, I'm selling Duran Duran and the Buggles. And I don't know why, because they're not getting played, but I just sold 3 boxes in Tulsa, and that's a lot of records.
And it almost came down to being as absurd of, on one side of the road where they had cable, where MTV was being piped in, that side of the road were Duran fans, and on the other side of the road where MTV didn't exist, or the cable, there wouldn't be fans.
We developed a great relationship with MTV. You know, they were hungry for videos at that point, because you had people that wouldn't make videos. I mean, some of the kind of more credible rock people were, you know, really backed away from it. They thought it was going to ruin music. They thought it was the end of music.
Because you're lonely in your nightmare, let me in. Because there's heat beneath your window, let me in. And it's silent on your stone field, let me in.
The Sri Lankan experience really pressed it home that actually what was being made was in effect a film, and it wasn't just a bunch of video clips, if you like, for promotional purposes for the singles. It was something more than that, and so it was therefore a learning experience for the band, as much as it was a great experience for Russell Mulcahy to actually have the budget to indulge in his great ideas.
And we filmed 3 videos in that 7 days, so when we were in a jungle, we would film a bit of Hungry Like a Wolf, and then we'd do a little bit of Save a Prayer.
It was a whirlwind. We were there, and particularly for me, arriving late. We just got in, did the videos. We were sort of on a beach, jumping into the sea, there at the sunset, on an elephant. Simon and I would drop from a helicopter on top of this massive mountain, which I don't know how I ever did that. I mean, I'd never do that in my life again. And then had to climb back up onto it, and flew off, went over a jungle, and that was it. All done.
Save a Prayer is still my favourite track on Rio. I just think it's totally timeless, that song. I love the melancholy atmosphere of it. I think Simon singing on that is probably the best I've ever heard him.
We knew it was an anthem. We knew that it was, and really great anthems, so they stand out anyway.
And then these guitars, these so beautiful. There's a lot of chorus on them, but that's the body of the song. That's what supports the melody throughout.
The bass is recorded over 2 tracks. I've been playing this live recently, and I've been using it, sort of a chorus pedal to give me this sound, which is what I thought it was, but it's actually 2 tracks, which gives that sort of phased effect, almost like a fretless. There's 4 synths, and there's 4 guitars. It's a nice mixture of techno and organic, you know, and it's that warmth, that new. It's warm, but it's new at the same time, which is nice.
The most important line in it is the one about some people call it a one-night stand, but we can call it paradise. This idea of let's not think about what it means, let's not think about tomorrow, just think about now. You know, that's the only thing that matters.
Some people call it a one-night stand, but we can call it paradise. Don't say a prayer for me now.
That feeling of now, that now is the important time. It slightly got over the sort of the rumpled sheets aspect of it, and concentrated on the philosophy idea a bit more, I'm really glad it did that, because that's really what was in my mind at the time.
You just don't expect, the front man of a style band, which is not to dismiss them, that's like dismissing Roxy music, you can't. You just don't expect them to go deep into themselves, and occasionally Le Bon did. He had that ability to do that.
It's only one drum take.
In those days, you could play the song for 5 minutes. You made a mistake at the end, and it's like, oh no, I've got to go and do it again. So you'd have to go and re-record the whole drum track. And we used to make 12-inch versions as well, which were like 10 minutes long, and they were all played live. You know, you couldn't cut it up on the computer and make loops as you do now. It's like, okay, Roger, this is a 10-minute version of the song, start now. And 10 minutes later, I'd still be playing.
Andy's lead comes in, so we have, which is actually the closest we ever got to a sort of anthemic rock thing. It's a nice mixture of old and new.
This thing called a bender. So the melody on Save a Prayer goes...
It's just one of those parts that every time he plays it, you got to smile, you know. It's just one of those magic moments on stage. It's not lost its, specialness.
It's just very gentle, it's quite romantic, but it's also bittersweet, and it's quite sad, and I quite like that quality about it. And I just think that was kind of so unexpected of them at the time.
It's quite a sensual album. All the grooves move along, the right beat, it feels comfortable, it feels natural, there's nothing that really sounds over-rushed.
And these combinations of their own individual images, their own way of dressing, looking, the styling that went on, these wonderful videos, coupled together with this wonderful music. How could you not be happy when you were listening to Duran Duran music?
I'm glad they've come to be seen as a proper band, because the temptation would always be to diss it because they were such pop dollies, you know. The point is that there was a severe group intelligence behind that, clear as day. They were smart guys, they are smart guys. Where they were all coming from was correct. Art, style, fashion, deep knowledge of music.
Anything that is classic is because it is enduring. In other words, it's timeless. And Rio today is just as fresh as it was the day I first heard it.
It was just one of those amazing periods of time, probably will never touch again, where everything just seemed to be perfect.
I think that's a combination of a band that is at the top of its game, that is just having so much fun playing every day, that is playing more than it ever thought it would play. and an engineer producer who just knows exactly what to do, knows exactly how to channel what he's hearing.
I was so excited by the fact that we'd made this record.
We just hit the right nerve. Sometimes, you know, you can try and overthink things and guess at what it is the public would like to hear and do something that you feel is right on the pulse and miss it by a mile. Other times, if you just do what you like and what comes naturally, you hit that nerve.